Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are diving headfirst into an absolute pressure cooker of a match. We're talking about the 2026 World Cup knockout clash between Spain and Portugal. Look, when these two Iberian neighbors step onto the pitch, it's never just a game, right? It is a massive collision of rich sporting cultures and deep, deep history. The margins in this tournament are razor thin, and the tactical tension here? Oh, it was completely off the charts. We're going to break down the exact mechanisms that made this specific showdown so incredibly compelling.
You could feel it before the referee even blew the whistle. The atmosphere was just electric. As the commentators said right from the jump, the stadium was absolutely jam-packed, and honestly, it instantly transported everyone right back to that legendary, completely chaotic 3-3 draw back in the 2018 group stages. That game was an all-out shootout, and you could feel the heavy historical weight of that specific memory hanging over every single fan in the stands. It set this intense stage, It just built up this wild anticipation for how these two tactical heavyweights were going to size each other up this time around.
But here's the thing, the context this time couldn't be more different. Think about it. A mistake back in that 2018 group stage didn't mean you were instantly packing your bags, right? There was always a safety net of other games. But 2026? This is a knockout clash. Everything is literally on the line, and that massive shift in pressure drastically changes how both teams play. In a do-or-die scenario, the psychological burden is just suffocating. Managers have to meticulously weigh every single tactical risk against the very real, devastating reality of being sent home early.
So what we got was a fundamental, almost philosophical clash of styles. It's like watching a giant puzzle come together. On one side, you have Spain. Their approach is all about what's been called their glorious, beautiful football. They want to suffocate you with relentless possession in these intricate, dizzying passing networks. Portugal, on the flip side, was perfectly primed to absorb all that pressure. They leaned heavily on deeply resilient, organized defending, just waiting, biding their time for the exact right moment to launch highly attractive, lightning-fast counterattacks. It really was the ultimate test of sustained possession versus lethal transition play.
And you could actually see the rhythm of the match evolve in very distinct phases as the clock ticked on. The opening minutes played out exactly like you'd expect. Spain had the ball, dictating the tempo, establishing that signature style. But as we got deeper into the game, things shifted. It went from calm possession to just absolute desperate survival. We saw brilliant game-saving goalkeeping, and we literally heard the sound of rattled woodwork as both sides traded these massive, unexpected blows. The tension just slowly boiled over like a pressure cooker, building up to a breathless final few minutes, decided by one single defining strike. Now, to really grasp how this broader clash of styles worked, we have to zoom in on the individual battles happening all over the pitch. Because let's face it, these micro-duels are what actually dictate the macro tactics. Out on the wing, you had the electric Lamine Yamal constantly trying to isolate Diogo Costa and Nuno Mendes, hunting for just a fraction of an advantage. And on the other end, the veteran presence of Cristiano Ronaldo, who, by the way, was surrounded by all this buzzing transfer context, going head-to-head with Unai Simon in goal. It was just this fascinating mix of young generational talent colliding with elite veteran discipline.
Speaking of Yamal, his signature threat is just relentless. His whole defining maneuver is constantly probing, looking for a gap, and then expertly cutting onto his favored left foot. The crazy thing is, it's a highly predictable tactic, but actually stopping it in real time, almost impossible. The Portuguese defense knew exactly what he wanted to do every single time he touched the ball. But that intense athletic battle to deny him that specific pocket of space, that became one of the absolute most fascinating tactical subplots of the whole match.
But here's the catch for Spain. Even when they managed to pull off those complex passing networks and play their beautiful football, they kept running into a brick wall. They combined perfectly to set Yamal up in his favorite spots, but as the commentators were screaming during the broadcast, they were met with these absolutely brilliant, desperate saves from Diogo Costa. The guy put on an absolute masterclass. He was single-handedly denying Spain's early momentum, proving that all the possession in the world doesn't guarantee a breakthrough if you're up against an elite shot stopper having the game of his life.
And Portugal certainly wasn't just sitting back parking the bus either, no way. They launched this rapid-fire sequence of massive, heart-stopping counterpunches that totally flipped the script. First, Ronaldo stretches for a really difficult ball, forcing a spectacular save from a seemingly unbeatable Unai Simon. Then, just moments later, Nuno Mendes smashes a vicious strike that actually hits the underside of the crossbar. And right after that, Bruno Fernandes lashes a spectacular effort right into the side netting. Portugal was literally rattling the woodwork, showing immense attacking teeth every time they broke forward.
To survive those furious end-to-end attacks and keep the game level, Portugal had to rely heavily on elite defensive organization. And Rúben Dias, he embodied this perfectly. He stepped up as the ultimate double bank marking savior. When Spain engineered this incredibly dangerous cutback from a really tough angle, it was a perfectly timed, totally desperate block by the Manchester City defender that kept the ball out of the net. I mean, that is exactly the kind of high-stakes resilience and split-second decision-making you absolutely have to survive at this stage of a major tournament.
So, you might be wondering, why go to such desperate lengths? Why push through that level of exhaustion? Well, it all boils down to one number, 19. As in, the 19th of July. That's the exact date of the World Cup final in New York and New Jersey. That ultimate prize is the singular focus burning in the minds of these players. They are literally throwing their bodies on the line, because the reality is pretty simple. If you lose here, that dream of July 19th vanishes in an instant.
And as the clock kept ticking down and these premium scoring chances were repeatedly squandered, the whole psychological landscape of the match started to shift. You could feel it. The looming threat of penalties began creeping into the minds of every single player on that pitch. In a knockout clash, when the deadlock simply refuses to break and your margin for error drops to zero, the sheer fear of a shootout inherently changes the game. Risk management totally takes over, and suddenly every single pass carries the heavy weight of potential elimination.
Now, for Spain, going to penalties wasn't just a risk, it was a genuine nightmare scenario. Why? Because Diogo Costa isn't just a great, reliable goalkeeper. He carries this formidable, globally recognized reputation as a specialized penalty-saving expert. And believe me, Spain's coaching staff and players knew exactly what that meant. They understood they absolutely had to find a way to end this match in regular time. Going to a shootout meant handing a massive psychological advantage straight to Costa and letting him use his tournament-ending expertise against them. No way they wanted that.
Which brings us right to the breathless final moments of regular time. The suspense in the stadium was so thick you could cut it with a knife, leaving all of us watching with one ultimate question. Could Spain somehow find a decisive winner before having to face Costa from the penalty spot? In the tightly contested tactical chess match like this, you never quite know when that final golden chance is going to present itself. But when it finally does pop up, you have to be absolutely ruthless and take it, or you are risking everything in the lottery of penalties.
And then came the cathartic release. A beautifully weighted ball, played perfectly through the absolute tightest of lines, finally shattered the deadlock. After an entire match of just being frustrated by organized double bank marking and those brilliant individual saves, Spain's persistent, methodical possession finally picked the lock. They crafted the perfect final sequence to bypass that resilient Portuguese defensive structure in the absolute nick of time. It really proved that their sheer commitment to their core footballing philosophy could, eventually, yield a result.
And the player positioned perfectly to finish off that sequence? Mikel Merino. Operating exactly as the ultimate scorer of big goals, he provided that much-needed late-game catharsis for a squad that was quite literally running out of time. Merino stepped up exactly when his country needed his specific skill set the most, decisively settling what had been an incredibly thrilling stalemate. His ability to find that little pocket of space in a crowded penalty area was the subtle difference-maker in a match totally defined by razor-thin margins.
The broadcast call actually captured it perfectly. It capped off this entire exhausting narrative. Spain, Merino, scorer of big goals, looks like he settled this one. You could literally hear the genuine relief and the sheer exhaustion in the commentator's voice. It was a dramatic, definitive conclusion to a grueling tactical battle that thoroughly tested the physical and mental limits of every single player out there. It ended a contest that absolutely lived up to its heavyweight, knockout stage billing.
So, that leaves us with one final thought to ponder today. Having survived this incredibly demanding Iberian thriller, does Spain now have the necessary momentum to ride this wave all the way to the final on July 19th? They've certainly proven they can navigate the complex tactical waters of a deep tournament run. But let's be honest, the road ahead only gets tougher from here. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will see you next time as we keep unpacking the absolute most fascinating stories in the world of sports.